Hi, everybody. This is Kate Haley with Glazer's Camera, welcoming you to, we're getting close to the weekend, but it's Thursday and we have two fantastic presentations today with Sigma. We're going to start the day off by talking about turning your still photography skills into video skills. And this evening, we're going to talk about pet photography. But before we get to that, let me just share a couple of tidbits and then I'll introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Just a reminder, we are continuing to celebrate 85 years here in the Seattle area. Well, really, Seattle. Third generation family owned business, offering you all your photo, video, audio, and photo accessory needs, as well as one of the biggest rental houses you could find. So lots of ways to try new gear or buy new gear here in the Seattle area. And we also have a website where you can order things online and have them shipped to you. How awesome is that, right? The reason why I'm mentioning that is because our 85th anniversary is not just an opportunity for all of this awesome education that we're hosting. It is an opportunity for you to save a few dollars. We have different promotions happening throughout the week, each week, as we've had different themes. And this week is Lenses Week. So if you signed up, and if you haven't, please go do that now. You might get a follow-up email with a special promo from Sigma. So, I mean, maybe, possibly, you only can sign up to know, or you can come into the store to see what deals are happening this week. They are changing kind of weekly with these super special extra promotions that can only be taken advantage of in the store or through those registrations for our events. So if you haven't signed up, please go sign up, all right? With that said, like I said, for our event today starting now, we have Brian Linhoff, who's a senior technical representative with Sigma, and he's got a little presentation on translating your photography skills to video skills. If you have questions during this session, as always, please post those questions in the comments on Facebook Live or in the chat room on YouTube, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A throughout. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit of Q&A at the end. So don't be shy, ask those questions because it's a great opportunity to get some of those questions answered by someone who is an expert. So without further ado, let me introduce Brian. And Brian, you might have this in your presentation, but we'd love to know just a little bit about you, what you do with Sigma, and maybe your background in photo and video.
Oh, thanks for everybody having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody today. So I started working in a camera store about, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. I'm from St. Louis, so a store much like Glazer's. I was an assistant manager there and became a manager, learned a ton about photography working in a store, went to work for Sony for a couple of years, helped launch the mirrorless system, the Alpha series system with them. And then I moved to Sigma and I've been working with Sigma ever since. I work with Aaron and a bunch of the tech reps. I focus on stills in the Midwest, but I also help deal with and, I'm a tech rep also on the cinema side. So I'm a busy person, so to say. So it's actually a change of pace to sit around and just do a presentation and you not have to think about the 30, 40, 50, or 60 emails waiting in my inbox. So I'm really happy to be here today. So thanks for having me.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. I won't keep the folks tuning in waiting. Like I said, just a quick reminder, if you have questions, please post those in the comments or in the chat so we can get a few of those questions answered along the way. So let's dive into your presentation so we can get started since we only have a little bit of time with you.
Yeah, let's get started. Let's figure if I can figure this whole screen share thing out, and away we go. So, what you're up on the screen here, I love this image because this is the intimidating image, right? This is a red camera, a big old cine lens sticking on the end. And this is what every videographer, well, not everyone, but you see this setup in front of you, and you think, wow, I can never do this. Look at all that gear. Look at what it costs. The amazing thing about today's cameras and gear is for the gear you probably already own, it can go a long way to actually, learning about video and using that gear you have, maybe with a little investment in some other gear. You don't have to spend $20,000-$30,000 to get this amazing camera. A lot of the cameras today already make great video, and especially if you're learning, there's nothing better to learn on stuff you already have. So let's get started. So this is a little video that I love to show. It's has a lot of elements to it that I'm going to kind of refer back to when we're going through the presentation. It's a product video of our 2470, which is a super common lens, whether it's our lens or somebody else's. This is an amazing lens to just kind of get started with in video. Tons of people have it. It lets in a lot of light. It's a good wide angle to mid body level portrait lens. But what I want everybody to take a minute and look at while they're watching this is like the camera movement and how they focus, and just really look at how the lens is and how it's being shot, and then take a minute to look at. And I'm going to refer back to some of the stuff later on, try to spark your mind on this. So here we go. Hopefully the video will translate well over the Zoom. It doesn't get too compressed.
Even after 17 years, I still love what I do. I love capturing the moments between moments. No one else is looking at what's going on, and I'm there and I'm capturing it.
Are you guys getting sound? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, we have sound.
Really can't get into a creative mindset. I'm looking for lenses that are gonna make my. I want to know that it's gonna work. Every time I pick it up, there's no. Can we do that again? You have to capture the moments as it's happening. The 24-7 gives me the focal length.
Could you actually turn it up a little bit?
Thank
you.
It allows you a lot of flexibility really quickly without breaking the bank. They're affordable lenses, but with top quality results. I'm creating that couple's first family heirloom, and it's cherished. And knowing that what I've done is going to allow them to relive their wedding day, it's a really big part of why I still enjoy what I'm doing. My name's Sam Wong. I'm a wedding photographer.
So that video is, there's a lot of gear and there's a lot of stuff going on in just that little snippet of a video. One of the keys to think about in this is, when we're starting to think about what gear we have and what we can use to create video is, lenses are pretty much in video are going to be exactly the same as when you take them and use them for video or stills. Yes, there is some differences, but in general, to get started, you can take what you have in your bag and bring that out and go and shoot. If you have like the 2470 or you have some primes, that shallow depth of field, all those type of things that makes a beautiful still image for you is going to allow you to translate those type of images to your video. So for example, if you're using a telephoto lens, you can still compress your background to give you a little bit more shallow depth of field, a more 3D image to it. Your f-stop and create, if you have a fast prime, you can still get that incredibly shallow depth of field, make the background kind of disappear and become less distracting. And then your wide angle lenses, you're going to still be able to use that to kind of like establish the background and get that big sweeping view. So, what I'm saying is you have a lot of stuff in your bag already that's going to allow you to take that, and when you go and analyze how you want your image to look, you're probably going to find you have a lot more stuff in your bag that you can use. And maybe you don't have the wide angle, or maybe you don't have the telephoto lens you want to create that video, but maybe that's just one lens purchase to help you out, as opposed to just going out and spending a ton of money on a whole bunch of different things. Now, I know we're in the camera business and we want to sell stuff, but I also want you to learn something and use what you got to be better. So when it's time for you to become the next Francis Ford Coppola or the next great DP, you come and buy my lenses. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So here's a couple just 3 different things. With a good portrait lens, you're going to get that shallow depth of field. When you're going to get dialogue and talking, like the gentleman up in the upper left-hand corner, that background just kind of disappears. And if you can imagine like some dialogue going on, you're really just going to be focusing on the person and what they're saying. Now, the wider angle shots on the beach, you know, you're grabbing that kind of, that's a telephoto lens with the kids just kind of playing and doing their thing. With a telephoto lens, you can step away from your subject and get a little bit more natural. So you're doing a product shot video, you know, getting the details and with like a macro lens of the jeans and getting the logo and stuff. These are all different lenses we're going to use to create that certain look and feel that translates directly into shooting this with video. And then we have like the one on the bottom, which would be just like a wide, you know, scene shot, you know, scene setting shot. Maybe if you can imagine this, you know, you see the guy walking across the beach and then all of a sudden it cuts to, you know, dialogue of him talking on this phone or playing on it with a close-up shot. So these are all things that you're going to have that you're going to use, and they're going to work the exact same way where you already have. You just have to think of more in terms of just one single shot. You have to think of it in a series of images to create a scene. It's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more work, but once you nail it, it's pretty awesome. The other really big important thing is, and it's even more important in video, is composition. You know, you really want to think about how your subject's placed, how they're in the scene. You want to make sure that there's no distracting elements. I think one of the greatest distracting elements in recent memory is, you know, a Starbucks cup sitting in the middle of the Game of Thrones episode. So, you know, that's something pretty major. And it was a pretty good laugh at the time. But, you know, you have to think about those things. You know, are you doing something like period? You know, you want to make sure there's nothing distracting in there, you know. And, you know, content aware and, you know, photoshopping out some phone lines or a trash can is easy enough to do in a still image, but to do that in video is incredibly hard and complicated and is probably above all of our budgets. Now, if you have a Hollywood budget, that's easy enough to do. They have the machines, the computers, and people that know how to do this. But when we're learning how to do stuff, the best way to do it right is to get it right in camera. And so that takes you really looking at your scene, making sure you're not missing anything. But you also want to just, you know, when you're doing composition, you want to choose the right angle to tell your story. If you're not sure what the right angle is, try a couple different angles. You know, when you're starting out, you really want to keep it simple. You want to use the rule of thirds. Make sure you're looking for leading lines, looking for patterns, all those like kind of rules of composition that you normally think about. So that when you create the shot, you have something interesting to talk about. You know, I talked about this, watch for distracting elements. You know, you can't just Photoshop stuff out. It's a lot harder to do that. And then, you know, when you're looking at setting up your image, make sure, you know, you have a fore, middle, and background, so it just kind of draws your eye through the image. The biggest type of thing that you can remember about, you know, one of the things is, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit more techy, is lighting and exposure, though. So, you know, the same things that apply to exposure for a still photo apply to a moving image. The biggest thing is with a lot of, in video, you don't have as much leeway in how to change your exposure. You're locked into a lot of more, you're locked in. So you still expose an image the same way, but you don't have as much of leeway in how you expose your image, if that makes sense. So I'll go into a little bit more detail, but my best tip for this is you really, really want to keep everything manual. I'm a big proponent, well, I guess I'm just a lazy photographer at times. You know, I love aperture priority. I love auto ISO. Those are my two favorite things in life on a camera. Because I kind of just set it and forget it. You know, I set it to whatever aperture I want to be at. I put the auto ISO on, take my images, and I really just focus on the image. If I do that with a video, though, I'm going to get very inconsistent results. So here's a video, just to kind of, this is my office. This is some images on my wall. So when we take this and we go to the side, and I have it on ISO, auto ISO now, what does the auto ISO do? It exposes, it grabs the light out my window and it exposes for that. Now imagine shooting a video, and as you're panning your camera, all of a sudden your exposure changes, but there's a person there. So that's just going to totally ruin the scene. What you want to happen is when you go over it gets a little bit dark. No, I uploaded the wrong video. I'm a horrible person. I was both, you go through these things 100 times and you misinsert the video. I apologize. So what was supposed to happen there was that, auto ISO was turned off, so that window stays incredibly bright, but the exposure on the wall stays the same. So you're getting a consistent exposure wherever you're doing when you're shooting your video. Oh, wait, here it is. There we go. Maybe I did something weird. So now if I had somebody sit and they're moving across the scene, my exposure is going to stay the same and the person's going to stay lit the same. You don't want that kind of fluctuation in exposure based on the ambient light that you would get with auto ISO. So how is exposure different? I talked about how you have to lock in certain settings. So when you're shooting video, you have to think of it in terms of frame rate. So traditionally, most Hollywood movies are going to be shot at 24 frames a second. A lot of TV is going to be shot at 30 frames a second. And a lot of people will shoot for like slow motion at 60 frames a second. So it's kind of just the rule of video, though, to keep your motion blur and keep the image looking good and not too stuttery, is you need to double your frames per second to make that your shutter speed. So for example, if I'm shooting at 24 frames a second, I want to have my shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. So once we decide what frame rate we're going to be, we're going to lock in our shutter speed. Now, typically, if I'm shooting something and I'm overexposed and I really want to be at f2.8 and I want to be at 100 ISO, but I'm still overexposed, how do I change that? How am I going to get my exposure correctly? I'm just going to raise my shutter speed, right? It's pretty simple and easy if I'm taking a still. But when I'm doing video, that setting is pretty much locked in and I don't really have a lot to change. So that leaves you with two other values to change, right? So you can change your f-stop or you can change your ISO. Well, what if you want a really shallow depth of field? But it's bright and sunny. I'm sitting at ISO 100, but I want to shoot at 2.8, right? I want to have that shallow depth of field. The only way to really kind of change your exposure then is to use neutral density filters. So what we would do then is block out how much light's coming into the camera with a filter on the front. You could raise your f-stop if you didn't have the neutral density filters, but then we're going to change the total look and feel of the image. The exact opposite of that is, maybe you're shooting in a darker area and you can't lower your shutter speed enough or you can't raise it enough. A lot of times, especially in indoors, you're going to need to bring some type of light. LED lighting has come down in price a significant amount nowadays. You can find some good solid bicolor lights to fill in and give you fill light at a relatively inexpensive price, up to more expensive ones that are going to do more and be a little bit more consistent. But if you're getting started, that's a great way to get started. It also allows you to light your subject to give you a more cinematic look instead of just depending on like overhead lights in the room to give you some weird color balance issues and things like that. My favorite thing about video and the hardest thing about video is focus. So every camera nowadays has a pretty solid autofocus. A lot of them have really good autofocus in video. The biggest problem is when you go to autofocus, and it's much like shooting your camera on auto, right? The camera is guessing what you want your image to look like. So instead of you taking control of the camera and moving to manual and telling it you want to be shot at f8 so you can get a lot of the scene in, or 2.8 or 1.4 so you can have that background disappear, the camera's guessing what it wants. Well, most autofocus systems, while they'll let you have a touch point where it'll focus on the back of the screen, it moving and jumping to do like a rack focus or changing focus, it can still be complicated. The best way to tell your story with video is you getting up and manually focusing it. It can be hard. It takes a lot of practice. There are ways and tools to help you do it. You can get like a focus. You can pull focus. You can get You can set marks on your lens, and there's all kinds of different tips and tricks. That's a whole nother 15 hours of video to figure that, but once you move beyond just autofocusing, you can really take your video to the next level, because I challenge you guys just to go home tonight or this afternoon and just go watch anything like on TV and how they rack focus to tell the story. Just a conversation in a car, the focus shifts to the person talking, then pulls back to the other person talking. You ever been watching a murder mystery and suddenly there's the knife on the floor? It was out of focus, then all of a sudden it's in focus. Things like that. That it's an amazing storytelling. And this is one of my favorite videos of a rack focus it's ever been done. So just a cool little GIF. We can call it what we will, but just amazing little rack focus on how it tells just that cool little story there. So this is a little bit of video from, it's one of my favorite little clips about how to focus and how to rack focus and what it does. And it kind of, by showing you some different things, that it kind of explains it. It's a video from No Film School. You can just do a search for rack focus if you want to see the thing in depth. I'm going to just play a little bit of it here. It's going to start with a little bit into the video. It gets rid of some of the preliminary stuff that's interesting, but not super interesting.
Performing a rack focus with a shallow depth of field is much more noticeable because something that was once very blurry is now in focus. Let's take a look at two examples from movies. Watch how the rack focus with a shallow depth of field is much more dramatic.
So we are immediately drawing our attention to where we want to be.
Also greatly affects the look of the rack focus. Higher focal lengths compress distance and therefore make the rack focus much more conspicuous. So why use a rack focus? In film and television, rack focuses range from barely noticeable to extremely obvious and eye-catching. A rack focus tends to go unnoticed when it's used to simply keep a subject in focus. Watch here as the two characters stay in focus as they approach the camera. Now pay attention to the light in the background and you'll notice it gradually falling out of focus. This is a necessity of filmmaking and it feels natural. Therefore, we tend to not register these types of adjustments in focus. For the sake of comparison, here are two examples of a character approaching the camera without any adjustment in focus. These moments don't feel natural and lend a sense of uncertainty. Rack focuses also work great for conversations where one character is placed in front of the other. Racking back and forth between each character is a simple and effective way to film the scene. Again, the racking back and forth doesn't call attention to itself. But more thoughtful rack focuses can be used during conversations to convey different feelings. Watch how the two rack focuses during this exchange from Sunshine lack consistency and force us to be a little unsure of the situation.
Just to make it absolutely clear, there's no way you can do that. Do I have to spell it out for you?
A rack focus can even be used for the sake of visual humor. Watching these two examples as the joke is revealed by bringing a character into focus.
Yeah. I speak for the rest of the board.
So it's like a 6-minute video, but there were some incredibly easy to see and great examples of a rack focus there and how that can really lend itself to taking your video and directing you to telling the story. This could be as simple as you doing like a product video and making sure when you're highlighting a feature of something, you're racking into focus to that specific point to draw attention to it. Like I said, if we were doing like a talking head interview, you can have two different cameras and you can rack focus in between them there. It's just an amazingly good way to tell the story. If done properly, you don't really notice it because you're immersed in the storyline and what's going on. It's not like, unless you're kind of a geek like me and then go, oh, that's really cool. That was a really good rack focus. But so that's one of my favorite kind of like tips on how to, it's something you can practice. It's something you already have. But once once you kind of like figure it out, it can really elevate your storytelling in your videos. One of the key things is to storytelling and video in particular is locking your camera down. How to prevent camera moving or how to introduce camera movement. A lot of people already own a tripod. If you don't own one, it's the one thing I'm going to tell you really just need to go buy, because jittery, shaky video of you hand holding video it's just, everybody's picked up their cell phone and filmed something, and it might be a great moment and it might mean a lot to you, but if you share it out, they're like, oh, it's sure shaky. I don't quite know what's going on. So having your video locked down on a tripod is hugely, it's really a must. I would, if you can use something like a ball head if you already have that to kind of get started, but I would recommend getting something with like a video head on it. And what a video head does for you is it allows you to quickly and easily create camera movements that are very smooth. So you're not getting any like jerky movements of like me hand holding my camera. No matter how smooth I think I am, I'm not that smooth. So having a video head, they're typically called like fluid heads or something, or something similar to that. It allows you to create, pans and arcs and camera movement, but to do it very smooth and very undistracting. The other thing is at some point, you're going to want to pick your camera up and not have it on a tripod. So how do we keep it safe and steady? A gimbal is a great way to do it. In the last, 7 years, 8 years, they've come such an amazing way, and you can get something for all the way from like $200 to the sky's the limit, that will smooth out your video and allow you to pick it up and take it with you as you're moving. Now, when we're shooting on a gimbal, this is where I think autofocus really becomes really handy, especially for you as the person learning how to shoot, because it's going to be very hard to hold the gimbal and then take it around and then focus. You almost need a 2-person crew to manually focus that wirelessly. And then we're getting beyond just the basics here. But there's many companies out there that make affordable gimbals that will work with a mirrorless camera or a DSLR that can get you started and just getting your camera off the tripod. But when you're getting started, the very first thing I do suggest is the tripod and work from there. One of the big things here is with video though is when I'm really thinking about a shoot, if I'm not just going out and taking a lens and testing it or just walking around to see what I can capture, if I have something in mind that I want to shoot, I'll typically think about it in my mind, like, oh, let's see, I want to do this, that, maybe I'll take some notes. I'll think about maybe where I want to go shoot it or where I can shoot what I'm looking to do. I'll see if I need any equipment, I'll just kind of write some stuff down. When we're shooting a video, the big thing here is to kind of, to storyboard or create a shot list in your mind, how to do this. So typically for the video, what I would recommend is you can download these online. There's storyboard programs, there's storyboard templates you can get, there's all kinds of different stuff. But a storyboard allows you to like quickly sketch out and visualize how you want the scene to look in your mind. As you're playing it through your mind, you have your wide establishing shot, and we move to the tight shot of them talking, and we move to a super close up of the watch of him looking at his watch. And those are all things you would put down on the storyboard to kind of direct your shot list. And your shot list is going to be your direction to make sure you just don't miss a shot. Because when we go into a video, it's not just that one still image. It is a combination of many still images shot at different angles that are put together to create an interesting video. Has anybody ever just, like, let's go find me a YouTube video to watch to learn something. So you go grab and you're like, oh, this looks promising. But it ends up being a guy just sitting there talking to the camera for hours on end about a subject, and there's no cutaways, there's no changes and transitions. It becomes a very static, boring video. You take that same topic with the same information, but you use different camera angles, you different stuff, you use different focal lengths and transitions and stuff, and it becomes much more dynamic and keeps your attention. So the idea of having a shot list and storyboarding a scene up for you, it's gonna allow you to create a much more interesting video and make you think about it a lot more. It's not something you can just kind of wing, so to say. So, and last but not least, if you're not sure, you maybe have a video in your mind and you haven't really thought about this, is my favorite thing to do is analyze and think about what type of feel you want to have. So the two guys up here on the screen are Marquise Brownlee and Linus, his tech tips. And I watch, they're my two like favorite tech bloggers. And they both have a certain aesthetic look to their videos. So if I were to create a tech vlog video, or I was going to do some camera reviews, Sigma decided, tomorrow Brian's translating video to class is really boring. We need to, make Aaron do the class, and he's going to be our tech blog reviewer. I would go through and I would look at these guys, see how they have everything set up. What do I like about it? What do I don't like about it? And I'd look at the lighting. I'd look at the camera. How do they speak to the camera? You'll notice that you'll come out of this when you look at stuff and look at people that you like and that do well in their sphere, that there's certain aesthetics that they have within their look and feel. Both of the guys have like some angles and stuff moving in the background. They're both kind of like sitting at a desk. They're not standing up. I mean, these are kind of different things I like about the videos. Maybe you don't like their videos and, that's not the way you'd want to go. But you can tell they're lit really well. You can look at the lighting and the lighting pattern and see that they probably have like a light up here that's lighting them really well. Whereas, I'm in my office here. I'm trying to do the floating head look. So the stuff behind me is a little messy. But if you're set up to a dedicated thing, take some time and look at the videos out there that you like. Try to figure out how they're doing what they're doing, and then try to recreate that. How are they lighting this? Are they just using a big window light? This is possible. Obviously, these guys make a lot of money doing what they do, so they probably have some of the top of the line gear. Just out of both of these guys use our Sigma 18-35 to shoot their videos. Just saying, they're cool guys. But that's one of the great things about this is in today's day and age, there is so much content out there that you can look and go, what are you trying to do? What do you like it? Maybe you love product videos. Well, go find a product you love the way it was shot and look at how they shoot it and try to recreate some of that. And then try to do that with what the gear you got. You can do a ton of stuff with the stuff you have. The amount of video and computing power inside a camera nowadays is just simply amazing. Our little FP here, this little guy, he shoots raw video. And that was unheard of just even a year ago. That would do it raw straight out of there. So there's a lot of great cameras you already have that you can take and you can do a lot of amazing stuff with. So last but not least, this is so one of our pros, his name's Timur Savan. He's one of our cinema pros. He shot this and he's one of my favorite guys in the world. I'll leave you with this little video. It's just super cool, but I want you to kind of think about the different things I've talked about. And especially in this last half, it's a video that takes a ton of planning, but it uses, focus pulls, it uses different camera movements and all that type of stuff to kind of, try to illustrate some of the points. If nothing else, it's just a really cool video and you guys should watch it. So this is all I got. And then after this, hopefully I have some questions from the audience and we can go from there.
The film you are about to see has no characters. If you spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies or better.
And that's it, guys. Any questions for me?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Let's start with that video, which was really cool, and then kind of go back to some of the stuff that you talked a little bit about before. So on this video, do you know like what kind of stabilization they may have been using? Because I could see a couple of different kinds of things, like maybe a tripod for one thing and maybe a gimbal for something else. Do you have any insight into, for the different kinds of shots, what stabilization they might have used?
So they obviously are going to use some. They're going to use. I think they used a Ronin, one of the earlier Ronins. I just remember maybe like 6 years ago or something. There was like the YouTube video of this guy holding a gimbal and this like thing, and you're like sitting in the camera store, and you're like, no way, that's insane. And you know, now they're like this little stick that it's nothing.
Right.
So yeah, there was definitely some gimbal action and there's a little bit of stuff that's probably out of reach for your everyday consumer. They use a robot also for some of those camera movements.
Okay.
There's a couple of them, but what I really love about that video is, you're looking at camera movement, you're looking at the focus and how, the focus highlights the details, but then you're also talking about how much planning had to go in for every single one of those shots and how you have to visualize what's going. And that's an extreme version of that. But when you really think about all the planning that goes into it, it's there to inspire you, not to make it intimidate you, so to say. So.
Well, and I think that in the creation of any video, you kind of have to sit there and plan, like, what are the goals, what are the shots you need, and all of that kind of stuff, so that you can make sure that you get what you need.
Right. I mean, there's so many different like camera angles, and you think, me and Aaron and a couple of guys on our tech team have worked on doing some different videos and stuff for us. And, you go through and you shoot everything, and you try to put it all together. And then all of a sudden Aaron's like, hey, it'd be great if, and suddenly you're like, oh, now it's time to reshoot. Now I need this angle and that angle. So to try to grab everything from the beginning so you don't have to go back and try to recreate that stuff is key. Sometimes it's better, especially when you're first starting out, is to maybe shoot a little bit more than what you need so that you have that extra footage to kind of pull into it.
Hang on one second. Can you confirm? Sure. Can you confirm the video's live?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. It looks like we had a little pause. It might have been because of the music in that video.
Okay.
So let's just take a step back and a couple of questions, and then it looks like we'll wrap the session up. Could you talk about the difference between what we call a focus pull or rack focusing?
So a focus pull is you're going to start out of focus and just kind of pull into focus, and you're going to hold there. A rack focus is where you're going to pull focus from one thing that's in focus. Typically, you're going to rack focus between two different objects to create interest. A lot of ways rack focus is going to be if there's a conversation, it's like a constant camera movement to help tell the story. Whereas a focus pull is you're either pulling focus to keep something in focus, or you're pulling focus to get it in focus. If that makes sense. They're very similar. So.
And are you doing that, or in your experience, are you doing that by hand, or are there tools that you're using to do that?
So most people are going to be doing it by hand. I will say today's cameras have gone a long way into helping especially amateurs do rack focuses, like the Sonys and Canons with their dual auto pixel focus, tapping the screen at one point and tapping it at another. Can simulate that. Sometimes they'll overshoot it, or maybe give you a little bit of like kick in it, so you might have to do it a couple times to make sure you get it really smooth. Other systems can allow you to pre-program a focus pull, so you can tell it to, if you have people at certain marks, you can tell the camera to focus to this mark and stop there. There's different ways to do it, but at the end, if you can teach yourself how to do it manually with maybe a little bit bigger monitor, or pulling off the back and doing it manually, you're gonna become you're gonna learn a skill that you can make a lot of money with. You have to have a lot of time on sets, but hey, you can do. It's definitely a talent. It's something that everybody can learn. It just takes practice more than anything.
All right. Okay. So can we talk just a moment about audio? We'll ask a little bit about audio.
Sure.
Do you have, so like here in the store, we're using a variety of things for having better audio during these live broadcasts. And do you have maybe like go-to mics that you might use? I mean, audio is like a whole session on its own, and really it can be a whole long weekend workshop on its own, depending on what your goals are for your videos. Because you have directional mics, you have lavaliers, you have all these different things. But let's talk about the video, that video that you just showed. What kind of mics would you recommend for a setup like that? It looked like there were maybe some like directional or boom mics in use in some of the footage that I saw.
Well, so for that video, they probably didn't really care about audio because they were just recording.
Just going to overlay the track.
Sound, yeah, okay. Just overlaying the soundtrack. But for, let's say, narrative commercial work, I would recommend a wireless mic system. They're relatively affordable nowadays. I think Rode and Sierra Monica.
I'm using the Rode Lavalier Go with the wireless Go system here. And it's really great because you can plug it into basically any camera with the right cables and all that stuff. And relatively inexpensive.
I think that's, if you're doing dialogue, you can hide the mic. It's right there with you. You're not concerned about that. So that's the way I would go. The systems are a lot cheaper than they use. If your budget's kind of small, again, Rode makes a lot of great, just shotgun mics and stuff. It's going to be, at a minimum, go spend $60 and buy a better mic than what's on your camera. There's nothing that ruins a great video. I didn't mention in there, but there's nothing that ruins a great video quicker than bad audio. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, and bad stabilization too. Like
that's true too.
For good video, you want it to be stable and you want it to have good audio.
Yeah.
So
on that note, the stream was temporarily suspended when we were talking about stabilization.
Oh, okay.
Because of policy violation, apparently.
Oh, probably the video that got
They're
played.
quick on that.
Yeah, they really are quick on that. So let me ask you.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Didn't even think about that part. So.
Yeah, it's okay. We're learning all sorts of stuff as we do these. So, so let's talk about tripods. Let me ask you: do you have like a go-to tripod recommendation? Monopods, fluid heads. What would be your like go-to setup? Maybe a couple options. One for someone who is on that budget and is just getting started, and one that might be a little bit higher end who, if their budget's a little bit more and they'd rather maybe spend a little bit more today but know it's going to last them longer. A couple of options there.
So I'm a big Manfrotto or Benro guy. Manfrotto makes a couple different, let me look at, I'm just looking it up real quick. I don't remember the, Manfrotto makes a couple like, around the 200 to 250 kind of entry level fluid heads with sticks, or the actual tripod legs that can work really great. And that's a great starting point for anybody. You really only need to go bigger than that is if you move into a bigger camera with a heavier payload. I think you can spend more than that, obviously, and get maybe some carbon fiber legs for it and reduce the weight and stuff. But I think you can get a really good head that will get you really started and last you a while for right around that like kind of $250 range in a like Manfrotto or Benro thing. If it's something you're going to start using every day as a professional, then spending the extra money, spending $500, $600, $700 is going to pay off in the long run, just because of build quality, not necessarily because it's going to do anything that much more drastically different than what you got. It's just it's going to be built to last longer and be abused more. So and that's kind of there. I've done the whole, let me buy a $50 tripod, and 6 months later I bought a $70 tripod, and then another 6 months later I bought a $150 tripod, and that one lasted a year, and then finally I just bought a tripod I could keep for a while. And that's one of those things I tell you to don't go cheap on investing in you don't have to go top of the line, but just a good solid middle of the road quality will do really good for you.
Yeah, I typically suggest that if people got it free with their camera purchase, maybe it might not be the best option. But another thing to keep in mind too, when you're thinking about tripods, stabilization, and all that good stuff, is make sure it is rated to hold your camera with its heaviest setup. Lens, audio attached, whatever, monitors attached, any of that kind of stuff. Make sure what you're looking at buying is designed to hold your rig, because if it's not, you're going to get into problems and something will fall off or drop, and then you're out even more money. So,
Yes.
so
No,
would it be possible to just kind of go over that stabilization section again, not showing the video, but just because folks did miss it because our stream was interrupted and we didn't realize it was interrupted until we had comments coming in. So could it be possible to just go through that? I think it was just a couple of slides, right? Or maybe one or two.
I think it was
Yeah.
talking.
Oh, because he was talking during the video.
It was after the video.
Oh,
So camera movement, is this kind of where we were at and we lost, or?
No, it was, 1 second. It was after the video had been done playing that YouTube was like, hold up.
well, we were just talking then.
Yeah, you were just talking.
Yeah, okay.
Like
Okay,
about
well, let me,
stabilization.
so you guys tuning in, we just made some suggestions for you for stabilization and audio. Does that help you guys? I see a thumbs up so far. If not, feel free to call the store, come in and see us. We can also help you make selections based on what gear you have or might be investing in. We have a staff of great people who can help answer those questions for you too.
Yeah, like I mean, in today's day and age, depending on what you're shooting, a good gimbal can run anywhere from $200 to $600. So once you have that tripod and then you want to start moving and stuff, a good solid gimbal would be great. There's a bunch of different manufacturers out there. They all have their benefits and disadvantages. So I would just, there's not one I support over the another. So I talk to the experts there. You guys probably, the one I use is one that was given to me. So
that's totally fair. But I'm a proponent. I did a similar thing that you did. The first tripod I bought was probably a $75 tripod, and it didn't last very long. I never really felt secure putting my gear on it. And then a couple of years into that, I was doing all this architectural work, and I was just like, you know what? I'm getting work. This tripod's going to pay for itself in a shoot. I'm just going to buy it. And I spent like $300 on a tripod. And honestly, it wasn't the right tripod for me. I ended up with a totally different brand about a year and a half later, but it ended up going to a carbon fiber that was $400 that I still have to this day, 6 years later. So, but it's rated to hold my gear. It's rated to hold more than my gear, honestly. But anyhow. Okay, so one question on that video that we can't play because we'll get into trouble.
I'm just glad we got through the video apparently. So
I don't know how much of it we got through. I have no idea. Oh, we got through the whole thing, and then it was like,
hold up,
wait a minute, you're done. Okay. So how did he move from the lower view to the top view of the sand plate? So just probably with a gimbal or something where he was able to move up like that, or maybe even a crane, right?
Yeah. So on that, it could have been the crane. It might. To be honest with you, then that type of shot where he's going like this and then he's coming up over the top was probably done with a robot. If you search, I think Nikon actually has a robot. It might not have been the one they use, but there's a division of Nikon that actually makes like robots for cinema. This is pretty cool. So if you've ever been to like any of like NAB or the bigger cinema shows, you see these kind of like big robots sitting out.
I have actually been to NAB.
Like, just like does this crazy thing, and so you can program all these movements in to do it. So I mean, there's a lot of practical stuff in that shot. There was a lot of like super high speed video shot. Like the cymbal getting hit when it's going near. That was like some crazy high frame rate to catch the cymbal like that, which is one of my favorite shots. But, I mean that's a definite high end video shoot. The idea there was to show you to exemplify what you can take some of your stuff into and demonstrate some of the more basics translate into even this high end stuff. So.
Well, and you also have, like, if you're worried about budget as you're getting into shooting video, that is one of the perks of being in the Seattle area, because Glazers has an amazing rentals department that includes a ton of video equipment, audio equipment, things like gimbals, things to help you stabilize that video. So if you're not ready to spend the money yet, guess what? You can rent it for a shoot and then try it out. Also to make sure that like the thing that you're contemplating purchasing is right for you and how you work. Like that's something I highly recommend to folks on a regular basis. So rent when you can, buy when it makes sense,
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of renting.
Yeah.
I at least on my side is somebody's like, I'm not sure if this is lens for. I'm like, go rent it, because
Yeah, exactly.
I know our stuff is so good that they're probably gonna fall in love with it, and I have no delusion that they're just gonna come back and buy it. So
well, and
yeah,
we
no,
even. Well,
I mean,
I was
but
just
even
going to say.
maybe you have this all laid out, and you only you only have you only need a wide angle for the shoot. I mean, maybe you don't need a really wide angle all the time. Just go rent it. Don't go spend $2,000 for it. Just come and rent it.
Well,
So.
but also, like I said, the whole concept of trying before you buy, because Glazers even offers, like you'll get 1 day of your rental towards the purchase of that item if you buy it within 30 days of when you rented it. And there's other perks to renting too. So that we have a lot of little perks built into that. So anyhow, with all that said, Brian, I want to thank you. Aaron hanging out in the background with Sigma also for helping to facilitate and make these things happen. We learned some things today too, not just about video, but things we can and can't do on YouTube. So with all that said, guess what, guys? We're not done. We have more Sigma for you this evening. Starting at 6 p.m., we're going to shift from video and talk about photographing pets. Now, I know a lot of you guys are into that because a lot of you have registered, but if you haven't registered yet, go do it right now, because guess what? You'll get that little follow-up email with a super special secret promotion that's only available for like another day or so. So go register. Join us tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know Annabelle, who is a Sigma ambassador, is super excited. She's already emailed and said, I'm going to be on early. We're going to be awesome. So, and that, I don't know if that's how she talks. That's just me being goofy. I'm pretty sure she doesn't talk like that. But I'm going to blame Aaron for my goofy voices today. Anyhow.
Annabelle's great. You should definitely, if you have the time, tune in. She's amazing. So
Sweet.
Highly recommend it.
All right.
Much better than me.
Okay. All right. Well, people who have tuned in are saying thank you. Very useful. So thank you again, Brian, Aaron, and Sigma for helping to make this happen. For everybody else, enjoy your afternoon, and please come back and visit with us this evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Wonderful. Thank you.